He's driving through the freaking jungle right now. Sheesh. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. Today we're taking a look at a brand new e-bike that just hit the market, and this thing already has the potential to become one of my favorite pedal assist e-bikes ever created. So without further ado, today we're taking a look at the all-new ZOOZ UF1200. Now, if you guys have watched some of my previous e-bike reviews, you will know that about a year ago I had the chance to review the Ultra Urban 1100 coming from ZOOZ, and I had a lot of good things to say about that bike. They're doing a lot of things differently than other e-bike companies out there, and it really gave me that nostalgia type of feel, kind of like a BMX bike that I rode as a kid. For this year, they decided to revamp their bike line one more time at bringing out the biggest, baddest bike that they have ever released, being this Ultra Flex 1200. Now, the build starts with a chromoly steel frame, which is actually bigger than the Ultra Urban that I've reviewed in the past. It features a 24mm hollow chromoly steel crankset, and this thing is pretty bomb-proof. It of course has a super cushy seat, which is ideal for riders between 5'7" all the way up to 6'5". If you're on the shorter end of that spectrum, there is a possibility to even ride this thing 2-up. Now, down to the ground, this thing does have aluminum wheels wrapped in some brand new Sticky Sweet tires. These tires are made by ZOOZ as well, and they are great for cornering and off-road grip. Plus side of these, they have a Kevlar lining puncture resistant liner inside of there, which is going to be great for the places that I'm riding today because there are a lot of goat heads out here. Now, moving up to the bars, on the right hand side we of course have a thumb throttle, and then over on the left hand side we have a display which will give you access to the different pedal assist modes 1 through 5. You can also enable and disable the headlight and taillight, which are integrated into the bike already from this display, and there are a ton of different settings that you can jump into using the owner's manual to change things like the top speed. Also up on the bars, we of course have the brake levers, which are pumping hydraulic fluid to the front and rear discs, which are 203mm, which is awesome for a bike like this. Since it goes pretty quick, you want to have nice stopping power there. One of the main things that you have probably already noticed, kind of style-wise, but it's also really functional, they have included a front and rear fender. The install of these is super easy. If you don't want to put them on, you don't have to. They just mount to the frame with a couple of screws, and there are also extra mounting holes for cargo baskets. Now, moving to the powertrain of this new bike, they're using an all-new QS213 motor with an 1800 watt peak output. That makes this a Class 2 bike as it ships, but like I mentioned, you can adjust that top speed when you dive into the settings, but know your local laws before you decide to do anything like that. That motor is powered by a proprietary ZOOZ battery, which is removable, and they've actually redesigned the mounting system on here, so you can install it and remove it with a simple turn of a key. You slide the battery back and it's out. You can charge this thing inside of your home if you don't have a place to store a bike in like a garage or a shed. So you can pop the battery out, charge the bike in your home, and then simply snap it back into place. Speaking of the battery, this thing has a massive 25 amp hour capacity using 70 LG cells. And they do of course include a 4 amp 110 volt charger. Now for the thing that really gives this bike its name, Ultra Flex, it's coming with fully adjustable suspension now. Because of the suspension, we of course now have a rear swing arm for all sorts of terrain absorption, and the shocks back here can be adjusted for both preload and rebound. And then up in the front, the suspension is adjustable for compression and rebound, but this really isn't just for comfort. Having adjustable suspension like this is actually going to give you better grip and traction depending on the terrain that you're riding in, and it's really spec'd for a variety of different surfaces and abuse. Last but not least, this thing has a top speed of about 30 miles an hour and a range of 35 to 50 miles depending on your riding mode, pedal assist level, how much you're using the throttle, your terrain, rider weight, and all of that good stuff. Now, I have to be honest with you guys, this is not going to be my complete first impression of this bike because I've already put 10 miles on the bike. As soon as I got it out of the box, I set it up really quickly, and I've been riding this bike for the past couple of weeks now. But we're gonna throw on a helmet, go for a ride around the trails in this area, and I will fill you guys in on some more details of the Ultra Flex 1200. Alright guys, prepare yourself for a brain dump of my thoughts on this bike. Like I said, I've already ridden it 10.8 miles before the start of this test. We'll kind of do a range test, but with my testing in the past of the Ultra Urban 1100, ZOOZ doesn't lie about their specs, so this thing will definitely do the top speed and the distance advertised depending on all of those factors, but Just look at this thing. One of the reasons I was drawn to ZOOZ bikes in the beginning was simply the styling of it, because it reminds me of bikes that I used to ride as a kid. Now this one in particular is finished with their chrome on here, which is typically not my style, but the chrome mixed with the gray and the lettering and the black and everything, this thing really is like a statement piece at this point. This bike has really cool lines all throughout, and what's great about it is that they're not really straying from their original designs. They just kind of took what they were used to making because it was a great product already, and now they added some suspension to it as well as some new features too. So one of the first things that I noticed when taking this thing out of the box and setting it up, all I really had to do was put the pedals on and get the bars all situated. Then you of course have the option to put the fenders on if you want them. I noticed that this bike is significantly bigger feeling than the Ultra Urban. It really doesn't look that much bigger, but as soon as you get over the seat here, you can feel that you're sitting a lot taller, and this bike is definitely going to be suited better for bigger riders out there. I'm about 5'10", 5'11", and this bike feels really comfortable for me. The controls are still the same, so if you caught my previous review of that Ultra Urban, you can turn off and on the lights with the plus button down here. It's going to be kind of hard to see on this camera here, but we have a plus and minus button to adjust the pedal assist modes, and then on top there's a single button which allows you to power off and on the bike. Charge port is located over here on the side of the battery. The keyhole to remove the battery is right over here, and everything else just feels like a normal bike. A normal ZOOZ bike, I should say. So right now we're in pedal assist 1, starting on a little bit of a hill here, and this thing just gets up and goes, helps you along the way, and it does it very silently. Now, I don't really know where these trails lead, but we're just gonna go for a ride, cruise around, maybe find some like little off-road things, bump through the grass, maybe a little jump here or there. And already I can tell a ride difference between the regular ZOOZ bikes and the Ultra Flex. Oh, this is a good test right here of the new sticky sweet tires. This thing just feels absolutely planted. Gravel like that still makes me a little bit nervous, but feels good. Where are we going here? So these tires being new from ZOOZ is no surprise to me that they feel very grippy. Like I could almost put a knee down on a bike like this. And what's cool about it is that it's still kind of sticking to the traditional feel of a bike tire. A ton of bike companies out there are creating fat tire bikes, which is cool. I think they have their place, but after all of the testing that I've done on various different platforms, I still think a more traditional style bike tire like this is my favorite. It just feels more maneuverable to me, and if you've caught some of my recent e-bike videos like in the past year, I tested a bike that had fat tires and I was riding on stuff kind of like this with little grass offshoots and whatever, and I got a flat on not one but both tires because of goat heads. Fat tires are of course going to pick that stuff up more regularly than a skinnier tire, but also these tires supposedly have Kevlar in them, so even if I get a little puncture from something like that, it should allow me to still finish out this ride and get back to my van. So it looks like pedal assist 1, we're doing about 10 miles an hour on a flat. I'm going to bump up to pedal assist 2. One of the things that I mentioned about the previous ZOOZ bikes is how quiet they are, so you really can't even tell that the motor is working on this thing. Doing about 13 miles an hour in pedal assist mode 2. Oh, that's one of those bikes, they just said. So anyway, going up a hill here in pedal assist mode 3. Doing about 11 miles an hour. Once I get to a flat, I believe pedal assist 3 will take me up to maybe 18 miles an hour. Let's use a little thumb throttle to go through these little switchbacks here. Man, I'm still new to this bike, obviously, and the tires, but it feels absolutely planted with these sticky sweets on here. I'm definitely a fan of them so far. We'll see how they do off-road, though, in a little bit. Now, I've never raced BMX bikes before, but kind of feels like that's what I'm doing right now. Oh, so many options. Let's go the high route. No. Let's go the lower route. Don't know what's in here. Hopefully no rocks. Hopefully no goat heads. So flat here, doing about 15, pedal assist 3. Let's go up to 4. Now pedaling up hills is really effortless. The bike is very balanced as well. Some fat tire bikes, it's a little bit difficult to ride without hands. Going uphill, doing 15 miles an hour, so that's nice. I think I picked the wrong path. Curbs, no issue at all when you have suspension like this. You can also probably just hop up them very easily too. Picking up some speed going downhill here, doing 26 miles an hour, and those hydraulic brakes coupled with these sticky tires just grips this thing up, which is exactly what you need on a bike that will do about 30 miles an hour. I've tested some bikes in the past that had very poor brakes but were kind of powerful, and that's not a good combination. Man, these little turns are so fun. You actually have to watch the position of your pedals when you're cornering like this, because you can scrape your pedals super easily. Woo! Just like that. So pedal assist 4, doing about 16. Let's go all the way up to 5. You can also turn this completely off if you just want to ride it like a regular pedal bike, but there are no gears, so it'd be like a fixie. Pedal assist 5, I'm doing 19, and I'm like barely feeling any resistance from the pedals down there. So this is about where it would cap out if you did not adjust the top speed. However, I of course bumped this thing up to be a class 3 bike, so now when I hit this throttle, perfect area to do a little speed test. 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. So a solid max there of about 32 miles per hour with a rider my weight. Currently, whoa, almost hit the bird. Currently, I think I weigh 180 pounds right now. So this thing definitely feels pretty good under the power of that thumb throttle. It looks like there's a little bridge down here to go through. Oh yeah. Let's feel these brakes. You can lock them up super easily. Ooh, it's dark in here. Which way? Which way? Let's go over here. So the power of this new bike feels very linear, just like I'm used to with the other bike. I've been putting a ton of miles on the Ultra Urban, so that's really the only e-bike that I've been riding since I've gotten it. And that's another reason why you guys don't see a ton of e-bike reviews here on the channel. When I find something that I truly really like, I tend to stick with it, and since I got that bike, I've been riding that one pretty much every time I take a bike out, and it just feels really good. I don't know, something about it. This one might take the cake though. I do like that the bike feels a little bit bigger. Ooh, here's a trail. I like that the bike feels a little bit bigger. Not that I'm a huge dude, but it just feels, I don't know, more like motorcycle-esque maybe. Look at this, this is cool. Now, since this bike can be better for taller riders, I'm of course not super tall, it would actually be okay, I think, to ride 2 up. Like if I sit way back on the seat here, you have so much real estate up front. I often see people riding bikes with like their children up front, and I think there would be plenty of room to take a little one with you on a quick little bike adventure. Now maybe if I found a way to put pegs in the rear, I could probably sit back and have my girlfriend sit up front. There's just a ton of room on this bike, and it's really hard to show on camera, but the side-by-side comparison of this and the older bikes might give you somewhat of an idea, hopefully. So not only does the bike feel a little bit bigger, but the bars feel a little bit taller. I'm not sure why they're not including the number plates on these anymore. I really like that look. I believe they are the same bars as the previous bike, so I probably could put one on here. I think they are still including those with all of their other bikes, so I'm not sure why they're not on these, but that just adds a little bit more styling to the bike, which I'm personally a fan of. One thing that I should probably put on this bike is a bell, so people know that I'm coming. Ding, ding. Now, since the suspension is the newest thing on this bike, let's stop and take a look at that real quick. We, of course, have the adjustments up here. On the left-hand side of the front forks is where you're going to be able to add air or remove air from the suspension. That way you can really fine-tune this thing to your own rider weight. You have a clicker on the right-hand side as well as underneath the forks over there. And then for the rear, to adjust this, you have 2 of these red knobs on each side. It looks like they're using D&M suspension, and then you can also kind of adjust this collar here like you would a coilover on a car. And that's going to get this bike riding exactly how you want it to. So if you want it to be super soft, you can click that thing to soft. You can adjust these springs, you can remove air in the front, or you can stiffen it up all around to be suited for how you want this thing to ride. I think I have this thing set up right in the middle ground for a rider my weight right now, and so far it feels really good. One thing to note, they have changed the location of the kickstand on this bike, which I'm a huge fan of, because previously when you would back the bike up, the crank would actually run into the position of the kickstand, and now you can kind of freewheel this thing. I have a whole lineup of electric bikes in my garage, and I always push them back into their spot, so I kind of like that this is located back here. Now I'd really like to actually test out this suspension if we can find like a little single track, maybe with some jumps. The trail system around the Denver metro area is just insane, so kind of getting lost as I'm doing this right now. Luckily, I'm recording my track so I can get back to the van where I parked. So now we can talk about the technical side of things for those of you who are really into e-bikes. I've mentioned this about ZOOZ in the past, but under the power of the thumb throttle, the motor of this thing is super silent. A lot of times when you have bikes, especially ones with thumb throttles, you get that kind of electric whirring sound, which is cool in some aspects. Some people like that. I personally don't mind it, but the first time that I got onto a ZOOZ bike, I mashed the thumb throttle here, was doing about 20, 25, 30 miles an hour, and you don't hear the sound of the electric motor at all. Now this motor supposedly is a little bit different. I can't really speak to the actual differences of this motor compared to the Ultra Urban, but I will say that it feels pretty similar to the old one, and that's definitely not a bad thing. I was a big fan of that bike, and this one feels very similar as well. Might be a little bit more powerful. I mean, this thing is fast. I'm doing 32 miles an hour just by pressing on that thumb throttle, and it's kind of crazy. Oh, here's a little offshoot suspension test. Now that I'm off-road with this thing, I could probably adjust the suspension to be even a little bit softer. But any bump that I would typically avoid on a non-suspension e-bike, you can just ride straight over it, and you don't even notice that it's there. The real test will be if we can find some jumps. Here's a little single track action. Man, you can really feel the difference between just like a rigid bike with no suspension and then something like this. A lot of the bumps on trails like this are kind of hidden because of all the weeds and grass around, and typically it would be really shaking your bones. After a while, you're going to feel it in your arms, even in your legs if you're standing up like this, but I can actually stay seated, just use the thumb throttle, and it feels really nice. Now the tires kind of look like they're really only made for street, but as of right now, I don't really notice any kind of like loss of grip while riding what looks like a kind of a slick tire in this like sandy, rocky stuff. It feels pretty planted. It even grips up too as soon as you hit those brakes. Ooh, where does this one go? Ooh, I'm just getting whacked by all these weeds and grass. So this right here is kind of what the bike was made for. The Ultra Urban, of course, is going to be good for urban environments, riding on the street. Those of you who like to stunt and do wheelies and things like that, these bikes are absolutely capable of that. I have not disconnected the brake sensor, so when I hit the brake, even while applying a little bit of throttle on the thumb there, the brakes are going to override that, but I believe that's a sensor that I can just like unscrew over here. But this bike with the suspension now, ooh, there we go. Regular bike would not have just made it up it like that. A bike like this is going to be great for all sorts of adventures that you guys see me go on in my kind of like regular life. This thing would be super fun in national parks, on other just random bike trails in different cities. It gives you 35 to 50 mile range depending on your throttle input and all the different factors. So you could go on quite a long adventure with a bike like this, and you can take it on pavement and off-road as well. Is this thing going to be like the overland bike? I mean, kind of. you're on roads and highways, and then you're hitting trails and different stuff like that. So far, it seems like this bike can do just a little bit of everything. Now, one more technical aspect of these bikes. This is actually not something that I typically prefer. I believe I talked about this in my video of the other bike, but I believe ZOOZ is still using a cadence sensor on these bikes, which, like I said, typically not a fan of. I would prefer a torque sensor, but the cadence sensor on here feels great. When I'm pedaling in Pedal Assist 5, as soon as I stop pedaling, that motor kicks off, which is good for when you're going low speeds. You don't want the bike to like take off from you. So let's go from a dead stop here. Just like half a rotation of the crank and that power comes on nice and smooth and linear. I'm like hardly pedaling here and it speeds all the way up to 19 miles an hour. Now let's lower the pedal assist mode because it's easier to tell. In a lower mode, we'll go down to 2 here. So now I'll pedal in pedal assist 2 and then stop. As soon as I stop, that motor disengages and now I'm just coasting. There are some bikes that use cadence sensors and they're a little bit uncontrollable. They're not going to kick on right when you want them to. They're also not going to turn off that motor right when you want them to. But the cadence sensor that ZOOZ is using feels really good. A torque sensor, on the other hand, is going to basically put out as much power as you're putting into it. And something like that is going to be great on like an electric mountain bike, a dedicated off-road machine, something like my Specialized Turbo Levo. I do like torque sensors, but this is a very nice cadence sensor. So for any of you e-bike junkies out there, hopefully that gives you some of my input on that. The thumb throttle though, you just can't beat it. Going down a hill here, 31, 32. Oh, I saw 33, 34. I think I just saw 35 there even. I don't want to be like glued to the display as I'm going that fast, but this thing definitely has power and it feels really good. So this bike as an e-bike has great features. It has the hydraulic disc brakes, powerful motor, great settings in here so I can adjust the pedal assist, the thumb throttle, everything is great. It's definitely easy for me to recommend a bike like this to someone who is looking to get into a premium style e-bike. Outside of that though, I really like the aesthetics of this bike. I've mentioned it a bunch, but it reminds me of a bike that I would ride as a kid. It kind of like has that 80s, 90s styling of like an old BMX bike. And it's definitely a head turner. Like I'm just watching as I pass people on trails like this here and you definitely get looks. Hey. Not to mention the chrome aspect of this bike. I mean, out here in the bright sunlight, it's just shining like crazy. Might drive my OCD a little bit crazy with keeping it clean. You'll see like little smudges and stuff because this bike is essentially like a mirror. I don't know if you guys can see yourself in there, but it's just a really cool looking bike. And if you already have a bike that has great features, why wouldn't you want it to look cool too? Let's give this a little test. Speed bumps at 18 miles an hour. Just lift your butt off the seat and you go right over them. Oh, we got a little skate park over here. Now, I don't want to get in these people's way because I'm on an electric bike, but this would be fun to come check out. Maybe do some little jumps. Now, here's a little bit of single track with prairie dogs running everywhere, which means there will probably be little prairie dog mounds to jump over. Maybe. Oh, it's tight. It's tight. Perks of a long seat right here. Saving my legs from getting beat up. He's driving through the freaking jungle right now. Sheesh. So now I'm at the point in the ride where I've already done over 10 miles and I'm not sure if I missed anything. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a distance test here. I'm gonna ride this thing until I probably get to about half battery. Then I will turn around at whatever point I'm at, go back to the van, and I'll see if I have any more final thoughts for you guys. Alright guys, back from the first proper test ride of this new bike, and we went a total of 27.5 miles. I made it all the way out to a point where it was the time to turn around. I was at 2 bars of battery and I just thumb throttled all the way back here. My map said it was going to take me an hour and 5 minutes to go from my furthest out point back. However, it took me 33 minutes. So you're really cutting down your commute time on a bicycle basically in half, if not more, depending on how you're actually riding this thing. So I still have 1 full bar of battery left, which turns into a blinking bar and then it completely dies, but all the way down to 1 bar of solid battery, I didn't notice any battery sag, and that's what I expected out of this thing when comparing it to the previous version. Now, everything about this bike is great. What really draws me to it is that it kind of feels like a mixture between a moped, a scooter, or even a motorcycle. It is class 2 as it ships, but when you bump up that top speed, the thumb throttle will take you to about 32 miles an hour. This bike is super easy for me to recommend just because it's kind of a jack of all trades. It's good on pavement, it's good off-road. The suspension made the ride super comfortable. Even when I'm on pavement or some like paved paths around here, there's a lot of bumps and like different things that you have to avoid, but with this you just kind of ride straight over it, which is awesome. And then last but not least, one of the best things about ZOOZ bikes in general is actually the community. There are organized meetups all over the country with other ZOOZ owners out there, and I've not had the chance to attend one, but they look like an absolute blast. You can see a lot of the stuff over on ZOOZ's social media, like on Instagram. You can see people jumping these bikes, which I did not get to do today. I didn't want to just jump into that skate park and disrupt anyone. But based off of the videos that they've posted, it's definitely possible and it looks pretty comfortable and cool while you're doing it. Another thing to go along with ZOOZ in the community is that they actually have a referral program where any owner, not just someone like me, I mean, I of course test things and give you guys discount codes all the time. I do have a discount code for this bike, which is TALONSEI, I believe. I'll leave the details down below. It can save you like $150 or more off of some of their bikes. But that's not just something that they offer to me. They offer it to the community as a whole. And what better of a way to get the word out there about your products is, one, making a kick-ass product that is actually really good through and through, but then also offering that discount to new people who might be interested in the bike while giving a kickback to the person referring. You can spread the word with your friend group, because once your friend rides one of your ZOOZ bikes, there's a good chance that they are going to want one for themselves. So you can share a code with your friends, that way they can save a bunch of money and the community will grow stronger and stronger every day. So I think that's all that I had for now. If you guys have any questions on the Ultra Flex 1200, let me know in the comments down below and I'll try to answer anything as best as possible. I'm going to try to bring this bike on some adventures in the future, but it is a little bit bigger than the previous one. I prefer the Ultra Flex over the Ultra Urban, but that's just me. I'm gonna see if I can pack this thing in the back of my van and bring it with me up to Overland Expo Mountain West in Loveland, Colorado. So that's all that I had for today. If you guys are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every single week. As always, thank you for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.